I was 17 inches from being dead before I could vote. That's how close the bullet came, 17 inches. I know because I measured it later, after everything stopped shaking, after I could breathe again. The tree behind me had a hole punched clean through at exactly the height my head had been 2 seconds before I bent down to tie my boot. 17 inches. I've thought about that number every day for 73 years. It was early December 1944. We were outside a town in France whose name I still can't pronounce right. Cold like I'd never known cold. The kind that makes your fingers stop working even inside gloves. We'd been pushing through those woods for 3 days and everything looked the same. Trees, mud, more trees. You stop seeing it after a while. Just put one foot in front of the other and try not to think. I was 19 years old, seemed like a man back then. Now I know I was just a kid who didn't know enough to be properly scared yet. That came later. My bootlace had come undone. Stupid thing to remember, but that's what saved me. I bent down, annoyed because my fingers were too cold to work the lace properly, and that's when I heard it, not the shot. You don't hear the one that almost gets you, but I heard the impact, that wet thunk of metal hitting wood right behind my head. Splinters hit my helmet. I dropped flat without thinking. For maybe 10 seconds, nothing happened. Just my heart trying to punch through my ribs and my breath making little clouds in the freezing air. Then I saw him. Maybe 40 yards out, partially hidden behind a thick oak. German uniform, rifle still raised. He was looking right at me. I had my M1. It was already in my hands. All I had to do was aim and squeeze. That's what we trained for. That's what I was supposed to do. He'd just tried to kill me. Missed by 17 inches, but he'd tried. Every manual, every officer, every veteran who'd talked to us said the same thing. You see the enemy, you fire. You hesitate, you die. But I didn't fire. I don't know why. Not then. Maybe it was because I could see his face, even at that distance. Maybe it was because his hands were shaking so bad I could see the rifle trembling. Maybe it was because he looked as young as I felt. Or maybe I was just too scared to move. I've never been sure. We stayed like that. Him behind his tree. Me flat in the mud with frost melting against my cheek. Both of us with rifles pointed at each other. Both of us knowing that whoever moved first would probably die. I could see my breath. I could see his breath. Little puffs of steam in the December air. My squad was maybe 50 yards back. I'd gotten ahead because I thought I heard something. Wanted to prove I wasn't scared. Stupid kid reasons. If I yelled, they'd come running. If I fired, they'd come running. Either way, he was dead. He had to know that. But he didn't run. Time does strange things in moments like that. Could have been 30 seconds. Could have been 5 minutes. I counted my heartbeats at one point. Got to 47 before I lost track. Then he did something I didn't expect. He lowered his rifle. Not fast, not like a surrender. Just slow and steady until it was pointing at the ground. His eyes never left mine. Even at 40 yards, even through the trees and the dim light, I could see he was crying. I should have fired then. Every instinct said fire. He could have been playing dead, could have been reaching for a grenade, could have been trying to buy time for others to flank me, but I didn't fire. I just watched him. He stepped out from behind the tree, hands visible, rifle hanging loose in one hand, barrel down. He was tall, thin. His uniform hung on him like it was made for someone else. He took 3 steps toward me, then stopped, raised one hand, palm out, not a wave, not a surrender. Just acknowledgement. One soldier to another. Then he turned and walked away. Didn't run, just walked. Disappeared into the trees heading east. I lay there for another minute after he was gone. Then I got up, tied my boot properly, and went back to my squad. Told them I'd thought I heard something, but it was nothing. That was the first lie. I told myself a lot more over the years. We moved through that area the next day. Found German positions abandoned. Fought through other positions that weren't. Lost 2 men in our company that week. Good men. Men with families back home who would never see them again. And I kept thinking about the German kid I let walk away. Wondering if he was one of the ones shooting at us later. Wondering if he killed anyone I knew. Wondering if those 17 inches had saved my life just so I could make the worst decision of the war. I never told anyone. Not my squad. Not my officers. Not my wife. When I finally made it home and tried to forget everything I'd seen. Definitely not my kids. How do you explain something like that? How do you tell them their father let an enemy soldier go? That while other men were dying doing their duty, I froze up and then made up excuses about why I didn't pull the trigger? If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. The war ended eventually. I came home, got a job at a mill, married Sarah in 1947, had 3 kids, bought a house, did all the normal things you're supposed to do, joined the VFW, went to the meetings, listened to other veterans tell their stories, never told mine. What was I going to say? That I let one go? That I couldn't pull the trigger when it mattered? I had nightmares for years, still do sometimes, but they're not about the combat, not about the friends I lost or the things I saw. They're about those 17 inches, about what would have happened if I hadn't bent down, about whether that German kid lived or died, about whether I saved a life or failed my duty or both. The years went by. 1950s, 1960s, Kennedy got shot. Vietnam happened. My kids grew up. I kept going to work, kept living my normal life, kept carrying that one moment with me everywhere I went. Sarah knew something bothered me. She'd catch me staring at nothing sometimes. But she was wise enough not to push. That's the thing about trauma. It finds its own time. 1970s came. My oldest joined the army. That nearly killed me. I tried to talk him out of it, made up reasons about college and careers and opportunities. But really, I was terrified he'd end up in a moment like mine, that he'd have to choose between duty and something else, something I still couldn't name even after 30 years. He came back fine, never saw combat, came home and became a teacher. Sometimes I wonder if God was giving me a break. The 1980s were when everything changed. It was 1979 actually. November. I was 54 years old, still working at the mill. Sarah and I were planning a trip to visit her sister in Pennsylvania. Normal life, normal day. Then I got a letter. It came to the VFW hall. Someone had forwarded it there after it went through about 6 different addresses. The envelope was thin, airmail, German stamps. My hand shook when I opened it. Didn't know why at first. Then I started reading. It was in English. Good English, actually. Better than mine in some ways. It started simple. To the American soldier who spared my life in December 1944 near Trier, France. My heart stopped. The letter went on. Said he'd been a conscript, 17 years old, pulled into service in 1943. Said his older brother had been killed in Russia and his father was in a camp for speaking against the regime. Said by December 1944, he knew Germany had lost, but they kept fighting anyway because stopping meant being shot by your own officers. He described that day, the woods, the cold, how he'd been separated from his unit during a retreat, how he'd been hiding for 2 days with almost no food, how he'd seen me and raised his rifle because he thought I'd seen him, and it was either shoot first or die. He said he'd aimed at my head, said he'd squeezed the trigger the same moment I bent down, said when he missed, he'd been overcome with relief because he didn't want to kill anyone, said when our eyes met, he'd seen the same terror in my face that he felt, said he'd decided in that moment that if I didn't shoot, neither would he. Then he'd walked away, threw his rifle in a stream a mile later, hid in a barn, was captured by Americans 3 days after that, spent 2 years in a POW camp, then went home to find his house had been bombed and his mother was dead, but he'd lived, got married, had children, became a teacher like my son, spent 35 years building a life. And every year on that December day, he'd thought about the American soldier who could have killed him but didn't. Said he'd been trying to find me for 10 years. Said he wanted to say thank you before it was too late. The letter included his address, a town in West Germany I'd never heard of. Asked if I'd be willing to write back. Said he understood if I didn't want to. Said he just needed me to know that his life had been worth sparing. I sat with that letter for 3 days. Didn't tell Sarah, didn't tell anyone, just kept reading it over and over. All those years of guilt, all that wondering, all those nightmares about whether I'd made the right choice or betrayed my duty. And here was this letter saying I'd saved a life, a real life, a man who'd gone on to have a family and a career and grandchildren. But it didn't feel like relief, not at first, because I couldn't stop thinking about the 2 men from my company who died that week. What if it had been him who killed them? What if my moment of hesitation had cost someone else their life? The letter didn't answer that. It couldn't. I wrote back eventually. Took me 2 weeks to figure out what to say. I told him my name, told him about my life, told him I'd thought about that day too, but I didn't tell him about the guilt, didn't tell him about the nightmares, didn't tell him that for 35 years, I'd thought of that moment as my greatest failure. How could I tell him that his thank you letter was also a confession? We wrote back and forth for a few months. His name was Klaus Richter. He sent pictures of his family, 3 daughters, 7 grandchildren, a small house with a garden, a normal life built on top of a war that tried to destroy everything. My letters got longer. I told him things I'd never told anyone, about the friends I'd lost, about coming home and not knowing how to live with what I'd seen, about loving my country but hating what war turned us into. He understood. His letters showed that. He wrote about his own struggles, about German guilt, about trying to raise children in a country that had done monstrous things, about loving your home while knowing its history was soaked in blood. We were both soldiers who'd survived, both carrying weight that never got lighter. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. In 1980, Klaus wrote and asked if we could meet, said he was planning to visit America for his daughter's wedding. She'd married an American serviceman stationed in Germany. They were having a second ceremony in New York. Klaus would be there for 2 weeks. Asked if I could travel up from Virginia. I almost said no. The thought of seeing him face to face after 36 years terrified me. In letters, we could be careful. We could choose our words. We could pretend the past was settled. But in person, how do you look at someone you almost killed? How do you shake hands with a man who almost made your wife a widow before you'd even met her? Sarah made the decision for me. I'd told her about the letters by then. Had to. They kept coming and I couldn't hide it anymore. She'd read a few, cried over them, then told me I was going to New York whether I wanted to or not. Said some things needed to be faced in person, said I'd carried enough weight alone, so I went. We drove up in October. Sarah insisted on coming with me. We stayed in a cheap hotel in Queens. The wedding was on a Saturday. Klaus had given me the address of a coffee shop where we could meet the day before. Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock. I got there 15 minutes early, sat in a booth by the window where I could see the street. Ordered coffee I didn't drink. Watched the door like I was on patrol again. My hands were shaking. Sarah sat across from me, holding my hand under the table, not saying anything. She knew better than to tell me it would be okay. At exactly 2 o'clock, a man walked in. Tall, thin, gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses. He looked around the coffee shop once, then his eyes found mine. I knew it was him immediately. Something in his face, something in the way he moved. After 36 years, across thousands of miles, in a country neither of us were born in, I recognized the boy behind the oak tree. We stood up at the same time. I don't remember walking to him. Don't remember the space between the booth and where he stood. Just suddenly we were face to face, close enough to touch, close enough to see he was crying. He didn't say anything, neither did I. What words could possibly cover 36 years? What language was big enough for what we'd carried? Instead, he opened his arms, and I stepped into them. We stood there in a coffee shop in Queens, New York, 2 old men holding each other and crying. The waitress looked away. Other customers pretended not to notice. Sarah watched from the booth with tears running down her face. And for the first time since that frozen December day in France, I felt something like peace. When we finally pulled back, Klaus kept his hands on my shoulders, looking at my face like he was memorizing it. Then he said, in his careful English, "Thank you for my life." And I said, like I'd been practicing for 36 years, "Thank you for mine." Because that's what I'd finally understood. He hadn't just walked away. He'd lowered his rifle first. He'd taken the risk first. He'd decided first. I'd just followed his lead. All those years thinking I'd frozen. All that guilt about failing my duty. But maybe I hadn't frozen. Maybe I'd just recognized something in that moment that took me decades to name. Maybe I'd seen a boy who didn't want to die. And maybe I'd decided that was more important than following orders. We sat in that coffee shop for 5 hours, closed the place down, talked about everything, the war, our families, what we'd built from the ashes. Klaus told me he'd become a teacher specifically to work with young people. Said he wanted to give them something better than what his generation had been given. Said every student he taught was his answer to the war. I told him about my son, about watching him join the army and being terrified, about the relief when he came home. Klaus nodded, said his daughters had married and moved away, and he missed them every day, but was grateful they'd never known war. Said their freedom was what he'd been walking toward that day in the woods. We talked about the guilt too. His guilt for serving Germany. My guilt for surviving when others didn't. His guilt for all the times he'd followed orders before that moment in the woods. My guilt for the one time I didn't. We laid it all out like we were comparing wounds. And somehow, saying it out loud to the one person who understood made it bearable. Sarah and Klaus's wife Eva joined us eventually. They'd met at the hotel and found their own coffee shop. Turned out they'd been doing the same thing we were, talking about what it's like to love men who came back from war but never quite came home. They'd become friends before we even introduced them. Made plans to write. That's what Sarah was like. Found the humanity in everything. We saw Klaus twice more during his visit. Once at his daughter's wedding, which was beautiful even though I didn't know anyone there. And once for breakfast the day before he flew back to Germany. That last morning, he gave me something, a photograph from the war. Him in his uniform, 17 years old, trying to look brave for a camera. On the back, he'd written in German. Later, Sarah helped me translate it. It said, "The boy you let become a man." I gave him a photograph too. Me and my squad in England before D-Day. Everyone trying to smile like we weren't terrified. I was in the back row, skinny kid with 2 big ears, thinking I was ready for anything. On the back I'd written, "The boy who learned mercy in the mud." We promised to keep writing. And we did. Every few months for the next 14 years. His health started failing in the early 1990s. Heart trouble. His letters got shorter. His handwriting got shakier. In 1994, on the 50th anniversary of that day in the woods, he sent me one last letter. It was simple. Just 2 sentences. "Thank you for 50 years of life. Thank you for teaching me what courage really means." He died 3 weeks later. Eva wrote to tell me. Said he'd been holding my photograph when he went. Said his daughters wanted me to know their father had talked about me often. Said I'd given him something he could never repay. I cried for 2 days. Sarah held me and didn't ask questions. She just knew. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I'm 92 years old now. Sarah passed in 2016. Cancer. I held her hand at the end just like she'd held mine in that coffee shop. Told her she'd save me as much as Klaus had. She smiled and said she knew. That was Sarah. Always knew things before I figured them out. My kids know the whole story now. I told them after Klaus died. Seemed important that they understand, that they know their father wasn't a hero in the traditional sense. Wasn't even a good soldier by most measures. Just a scared kid who hesitated at the right moment or the wrong moment. I'm still not sure which. My oldest son asked me once if I regretted it, if I wished I'd pulled the trigger. I thought about it for a long time before answering, because the honest answer is complicated. I don't regret Klaus living. I don't regret the teacher he became, or the daughters he raised, or the grandchildren who carry his name. I don't regret the friendship we built, or the letters we shared, or the peace we gave each other. But I do regret that I had to make that choice. I regret the war that put a 17-year-old German boy and a 19-year-old American boy in a frozen forest with rifles pointed at each other. I regret that someone had to die or nearly die for us to recognize each other's humanity. I regret all the others who didn't get 17 inches of luck or a moment of hesitation or a second chance. The bullet hole is still in that tree probably, unless the tree died or was cut down. Sometimes I wonder if anyone ever found it. If some French farmer stumbled across it and wondered about the story, about the 2 boys and the choice that changed everything, about how close the world came to one more death that wouldn't have changed the outcome of anything except 2 families who would have been incomplete. I've been thinking about that day a lot lately. When you're 92, you think about endings, about what you'll leave behind, about what your life meant. And I keep coming back to those 17 inches, that one moment, that one choice. People thank me for my service sometimes. They see the veteran hat or the VFW jacket, and they shake my hand and say thank you. And I always say you're welcome because that's what you're supposed to say. But in my head, I'm thinking about Klaus, about how the thing I'm most proud of from the war is the one time I didn't do what I was trained to do. The one time I let something other than duty make the decision. I'm not saying I was right. I'm not saying everyone should have done what I did. War is complicated. Survival is complicated. And there are other men who made different choices and lost friends because of it. I can't judge them. I can barely judge myself. All I can say is what happened, what I did, what it cost, and what it gave back. The nightmares stopped after I met Klaus. Didn't realize it at first. Just noticed one day that I'd slept through the night. Then another night. Then a week. Sarah noticed before I did. Said I seemed lighter. Like I'd put down something heavy I'd been carrying. She was right. For 36 years, I'd been walking around with that moment on my back. And then I met the man who shared the weight. And together somehow, we made it bearable. I visit Sarah's grave every week, tell her things, update her on the kids and grandkids, tell her about the news even though she probably knows already. And I always tell her about Klaus too. Remind her about that day in Queens when she made me face my past. Thank her for pushing me when I wanted to hide. She saved my life just as surely as that loose bootlace did. There's a folder in my desk with all of Klaus's letters, 63 of them over 14 years. I've read them all more times than I can count. Some are about everyday things, his garden, his grandchildren, Eva's cooking. Some are deeper, about memory and guilt and how you build a life after war, about teaching young people to be better than we were, about choosing mercy when the world demands violence. His daughters sent me letters after he died. Each one wrote to thank me, said their father had told them the story many times, said it had shaped how they saw the world. One of them, the youngest, wrote something that made me cry. She said, "My father taught me that courage isn't always about fighting. Sometimes it's about choosing not to." I think about that a lot, about courage, about what it means. When you're young and in uniform, they teach you courage means charging forward, facing fire, protecting your brothers, and all of that is true. I saw men do incredibly brave things. I saw friends die protecting others. I saw courage every single day. But I also saw something else that day in France. I saw a boy who had the courage to lower his rifle first, who had the courage to turn his back and walk away, trusting that I wouldn't shoot. That took something. Something I'm not sure I could have done if our positions were reversed. And I had the courage to let him go, to face the possibility that I was making a terrible mistake, to carry the weight of that choice for the rest of my life. Maybe that's what courage really is. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to choose something other than fear. Not the absence of doubt, but the willingness to act despite the doubt. Not the certainty that you're right, but the acceptance that you might be wrong and doing it anyway. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I've thought about writing this down before. Thought about it a lot, actually, but I could never find the words. How do you explain something you barely understand yourself? How do you tell a story that doesn't have a clear hero or villain or moral? How do you admit that the proudest moment of your war was also the most shameful? But I'm 92 now, and time is running out, and these memories deserve to exist somewhere other than in my head. Klaus's daughters deserve to know their father's story reached someone. My grandchildren deserve to know their grandfather wasn't perfect, but tried to be good. And maybe, somewhere, there's another soldier carrying weight from their own war who needs to know that mercy isn't weakness. That hesitation isn't always failure. That sometimes, the right choice is the one that haunts you. I still have the picture Klaus gave me. The 17-year-old boy in a uniform too big for him. I keep it in my wallet, next to a picture of Sarah, next to pictures of my kids and grandkids. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, try to see what I saw that day, try to understand why I didn't pull the trigger. And you know what I see? I see a kid, just a kid, scared and cold and so far from home. Just like I was, just like we all were. The uniform was different, the language was different, but the fear was exactly the same. War tries to make you forget that. War wants you to see uniforms and flags and sides. War wants you to dehumanize and simplify and reduce everything to us versus them. And most of the time, it works. It has to work. Because if you think too hard about the person in your sights, if you see them as someone's son or brother or father, you hesitate. And hesitation gets you killed. But sometimes, in rare moments, the human part breaks through, and you see clearly. And you have to choose between what you're trained to do and what you know is right. And there's no good answer. There's no clean solution. There's just you and your conscience and a decision that will echo for the rest of your life. I made my choice, Klaus made his, and we both lived with it. We both carried it. And when we finally met, we both understood that the weight was lighter when shared. That forgiveness is possible. That redemption isn't about erasing the past, but about building something better from it. The war ended 79 years ago. I've lived longer since then than most people live in total. I've had a career and a family, and a life that Klaus's gift of mercy made possible just as much as my bootlace did. And he had the same because I gave him the same gift. 2 boys making a choice in the woods. 2 old men finding peace in a coffee shop. 2 lives built on a moment of shared humanity in the middle of inhumanity. I don't know if there's a lesson in this. I don't know if I'm telling it right. I'm just an old man with memories that won't stay quiet, with a story that needs to be told before it's lost. With the hope that maybe someone listening will understand that war is full of impossible choices and that sometimes the wrong choice by military standards is the right choice by every other measure. My son asked me once what I wanted written on my headstone. I told him just my name and dates. Keep it simple. But in my head, I thought about what Klaus wrote on the back of that photograph. The boy who learned mercy in the mud. That's what I'd want. Not hero, not veteran, not even good soldier. Just someone who learned in one frozen moment that mercy mattered more than orders. I'll be buried next to Sarah when my time comes. Already picked out the plot. Already made the arrangements. My kids will be there. My grandchildren. Maybe some great-grandchildren if I hold on long enough. And somewhere in Germany, Klaus's daughters might hear about it. Might remember the American soldier their father talked about. Might say a prayer for the man who gave their father his life back. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can hope for. That our lives touch others. That our choices ripple outward. That the mercy we show comes back somehow. That the weight we carry can be shared. That the wars we fight eventually end. Not just in history books, but in our hearts. I still think about those 17 inches sometimes. About how different everything would be if my boot hadn't come untied. If I'd stood straight instead of bending down. If that bullet had found its target, Sarah would have married someone else. My kids wouldn't exist. Klaus's daughters wouldn't exist. All those grandchildren on both sides, all those lives, all those choices and moments and joys and sorrows, all of it depending on 17 inches and a loose bootlace and 2 boys who chose mercy. The tree is probably gone by now. The forest has changed. The war is ancient history. The soldiers are dying off one by one. Soon there won't be anyone left who remembers, who can tell you what it smelled like or sounded like or felt like, what it meant to be that young and that scared and that far from everything you knew, what it meant to have someone's life in your hands and have to choose in a split second between training and humanity. But the story will remain, in letters and photographs and memories passed down, in the lessons we learned and the peace we found, in the proof that even in war, even in the darkest moments, humanity can break through, that mercy is possible, that forgiveness is real, that 2 enemies can become friends, that the boy you almost killed can become the person who saves you. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I'm tired now. Telling this has taken something out of me, but it's a good tired. The kind you feel after setting down something heavy you've been carrying too long. Klaus understood that feeling. We talked about it in one of his letters, about how speaking truth, even painful truth, even truth you're ashamed of, is lighter than silence. How confession, even without absolution, is its own kind of peace. So this is my confession, my testimony, my witness. I, Henry Lawson, Private First Class, U.S. Army, veteran of the European theater, let an enemy soldier go. I had him in my sights. I had orders. I had every justification. And I didn't pull the trigger. Not because I was brave, not because I was wise. Maybe just because I was lucky enough to see clearly for one moment in the middle of chaos. And that soldier, Klaus Richter, 17 years old, conscript in a war he didn't believe in, lowered his rifle first, trusted me with his life, walked away when he could have kept fighting, and spent the next 50 years building something beautiful from that one moment of grace. We gave each other our lives that day. We gave each other our futures, our families, our peace. And when we finally met, we gave each other forgiveness for carrying the weight of it alone for so long. That's my story. That's what I wanted to tell you. Not because it makes me look good, not because I think I was right, but because it's true, because it happened. Because Klaus deserves to be remembered as more than just another enemy soldier. Because his daughters deserve to know their father's courage reached across an ocean and 36 years to save another broken soldier. Because maybe, just maybe, someone else needs to hear that mercy is possible even when everything says it isn't. I'm 92 years old. I've got maybe a few years left if I'm lucky. My body is failing. My memory is failing. But I remember that day. I remember Klaus. I remember the choice. And I remember that when I'm gone, when all of us who lived through that war are gone, the only thing that will remain is what we choose to leave behind. The stories we tell, the lessons we learned, the proof that we were more than just soldiers. that we were human beings who, in rare and precious moments, chose humanity over orders. 17 inches. That's all that separated life from death, mercy from duty, the future from nothing. 17 inches and a choice that two boys made in a frozen forest in France. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. Enough to build two lives, two families, two legacies. Enough to prove that even in war, even in hell, even when everything says kill or be killed, sometimes there's a third option. Sometimes there's mercy. That's what I learned in the mud. That's what Klaus taught me. That's what Sarah helped me understand. And that's what I'm trying to pass on now before it's too late, before the last of us who remember are gone, and the war becomes just dates and battles and numbers in a book. We were more than that. We were boys who became men in the worst possible way. We were soldiers who did our duty and sometimes failed it and sometimes transcended it. We were human beings who made impossible choices and lived with the consequences and tried, in our fumbling, inadequate way, to build something better from the ashes. And sometimes, if you were lucky, if you were blessed, if you had 17 inches of grace and a loose bootlace and a boy across from you who chose mercy first, you got a second chance. You got a life. You got a future. You got to meet the person you almost killed and hold them and cry and say thank you and mean it with every broken piece of your heart. That's what I got. That's what Klaus got. That's what we gave each other. And now I'm giving it to you. This story, this testimony, this proof that mercy matters, that choices echo, that humanity persists even in the darkest places. That war doesn't have to be the end of everything good. I hope someone hears this. I hope someone understands. I hope someone facing their own impossible choice, their own moment in the mud, their own decision between orders and conscience, remembers the story of two boys in a forest in France who chose mercy and lived to be grateful for it. That's all I have. That's my story. That's my life distilled down to its most essential moment. A bullet that missed, a rifle that lowered, a choice that saved two lives and created dozens more. 17 inches between death and everything that came after. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting an old man unburden himself. Thank you for keeping these memories alive a little longer. And if you ever find yourself in an impossible situation, if you ever have to choose between what you're told to do and what you know is right, remember Klaus. Remember me. Remember that mercy is possible. That courage sometimes means not pulling the trigger. That the choice that haunts you might also be the choice that saves you. God bless Klaus Richter. God bless Sarah Lawson. God bless everyone who carries the weight of war. And God bless anyone who's still listening to an old soldier ramble about the day that changed everything. I was 17 inches from being dead. Instead, I got 73 years of life. I got to love Sarah. I got to raise my children. I got to meet the man who spared me just as I spared him. I got to learn that mercy is stronger than orders, that humanity persists. That even in war, even in hell, even when everything says otherwise, sometimes grace breaks through. 17 inches, one loose bootlace, two scared boys, and a lifetime of gratitude for the choice we made. That's my story. That's all of it. Everything that matters. Everything that made me who I am. And now it's yours. Don't let it be forgotten. Pode ir para a parte o dos do roteiro. 0934I was holding his picture when they told me about September 11th. Klaus's picture. The one he gave me in New York, the 17-year-old boy in the too big uniform. I kept it on my desk at home after Sarah died. Looked at it sometimes when the house got too quiet, when the memories got too loud. That morning in 2001, I was sitting there with my coffee, just looking at his young face, when my daughter called crying and told me to turn on the television. The towers fell, and I sat there holding a picture of a German soldier from a war 60 years past. And all I could think was that we never learn. That every generation has to discover the same terrible truths. That young people keep dying in uniforms for old people's decisions. That mercy keeps getting harder to find. Ava sent me a letter a few weeks after the attacks. She'd seen the news in Germany, wanted to make sure I was okay, wanted me to know she was thinking of America, thinking of me. She wrote something I've never forgotten. She said Klaus used to say that the cycle only breaks when someone chooses to break it. When someone lowers their rifle first. When someone says no more. I thought about that a lot in the months after. About cycles. About how the world keeps turning and wars keep happening and boys keep dying. About how Klaus and I had broken one small cycle in a forest in France. About how it hadn't changed anything on the grand scale. The war went on. Other wars came. The towers fell. But for two families, for two lives, for dozens of children and grandchildren, it had changed everything. My grandson joined the Marines in 2003, wanted to serve after 9/11. Same thing I'd felt after Pearl Harbor. Same thing probably every young person feels when their country gets attacked. That need to do something, to protect, to serve. I tried to talk to him about it, tried to tell him war is more complicated than the recruiting posters make it seem. But how do you explain that to a 19-year-old who sees everything in black and white? I couldn't when I was his age. Couldn't really expect him to either. He deployed to Iraq in 2004. I didn't sleep much that year. Every phone call made my heart stop. Every news report about casualties made me sick. Sarah would have known what to say to comfort me, but Sarah was gone. And I was alone with my memories and my fears and my prayers that history wouldn't repeat itself in my own family. He came back changed. Didn't talk much about what he'd seen. Didn't want to go to counseling. Just worked on his car in my garage and didn't meet my eyes much. I recognized the signs, the distance, the haunted look, the way he'd startle at loud noises. I'd seen it in the mirror for years after I came home. One night he was working late on his car. I brought him a beer and sat on an old crate and didn't say anything for a while. Just listened to him work. The clank of tools, the creak of metal, the quiet breathing of a young man trying to fix something fixable because the unfixable things were too hard to face. Finally, I told him about Klaus, the whole story, the 17 inches, the choice, the guilt, the letters, the meeting in New York, the forgiveness we gave each other. I told him things I'd never told anyone except Sarah, about the nightmares, about the weight, about how hard it is to come home when part of you is still in the war. He stopped working, sat down on the garage floor with his back against the car, didn't look at me, just listened. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Did you ever figure out if you made the right choice?" I thought about that. I figured out it was my choice to make, and I chose mercy, and I got to live with the consequences of that, good and bad. That's all any of us can do. He nodded, took a drink of his beer. I made some choices too. Don't know if they were right. I know. How do you live with it? You carry it. You honor it by trying to be better. You find someone who understands and you share the weight. You forgive yourself eventually, or you try to. He looked at me then, really looked at me. Did Klaus forgive you? He thanked me, said I gave him his life, but I think what we really gave each other was permission to stop carrying it alone. My grandson nodded. We sat there in the garage for another hour. He didn't tell me what happened in Iraq, didn't share the details, but he told me enough about impossible choices, about split-second decisions, about seeing things that changed how you see everything else, about coming home and feeling like you left the most important part of yourself in the desert. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I told him about the VFW, about the other veterans, about how sometimes just being in a room with people who understand is enough, about how you don't have to explain everything, about how the silence between veterans is different than the silence between veterans and everyone else. He started going to meetings with me, didn't talk much at first, just listened, but slowly he started to heal, started to find his way back. He's okay now, has a family, has a job, still has hard days, but he's okay. And sometimes I think about how Klaus's choice in that forest in France rippled forward to help my grandson 60 years later. How mercy echoes, how the weight shared is weight halved, how the cycle breaks when someone chooses to break it. Ava died in 2008. Heart attack, quick and painless, her daughter said. I got the letter and cried like I'd lost family, because I had. Ava had been part of the miracle, part of the grace that gave Klaus and me our peace. I sent flowers, wrote letters to the daughters, told them their mother had helped save 2 broken soldiers just by understanding, by holding space for grief and guilt and gratitude all at once. Klaus's oldest daughter, Greta, came to visit me in 2010, flew all the way from Germany to Virginia, brought her husband and her son, said she wanted to meet the man her father talked about so often, wanted to see America, wanted to understand the story better. We sat on my porch, drank iced tea, talked for hours. She looked like Klaus, same eyes, same quiet way of considering things before speaking. She told me about growing up with a father who taught peace, who refused to let his daughters play with toy guns, who volunteered at refugee centers, who spent his whole life trying to balance the scales for the uniform he wore when he was 17. She said something that gutted me. She said her father used to have nightmares, would wake up crying sometimes, and he'd tell Eva in German that he'd killed the American boy, that the bullet hadn't missed, that he'd taken a life and stolen a future. The nightmares where his shot was true haunted him as much as my nightmares where I'd pulled my trigger. He needed to meet you, Greta said. As much as you needed to meet him, he needed to know you were real, that his mercy hadn't been meaningless, that the choice to lower his rifle first had mattered. I hadn't thought about it that way, had always focused on my own guilt, my own weight. Never fully considered that Klaus carried the mirror image, the what-ifs that went the other way, the horror of the shot that killed instead of missed. We'd both been haunted by the same moment, both needed the same forgiveness, both got it from the only person who could give it. Greta gave me more photographs, Klaus throughout his life, young teacher with his first class, middle-aged man with his daughters, old man in his garden. A life lived fully because a bullet missed and 2 boys chose mercy. She also gave me his medals, not military medals, teaching awards, community service recognitions, certificates from refugee organizations, the medals Klaus earned after the war, the ones that mattered to him. He wanted you to have these, Greta said. Wanted you to know what your choice became, what grew from that seed of mercy. I keep them in a box in my bedroom, next to Sarah's wedding ring, next to my own medals from the war, next to letters from Klaus and pictures of my family. The things that matter. The proof that life is built from small moments that ripple outward in ways we can't predict. Greta visits every few years now, brings different family members each time. Her children are grown now, have children of their own. Klaus's great-grandchildren. They carry his story, carry the miracle of the forest, carry the proof that mercy matters, that choices echo. That 2 boys made a decision that created dozens of lives. I'm 92 now, said that already, but it bears repeating, because 92 is old enough that most days are a gift, old enough that memory gets fuzzy around the edges, except for the things that matter most. Old enough to know I don't have many stories left to tell, but this one needed telling. This one needed preserving, not because I'm special, not because I'm a hero, but because it's proof. Proof that in the worst of humanity, the best can still break through. Proof that mercy is possible. Proof that enemies can become friends. Proof that the cycle can break if someone is brave enough to break it. The world hasn't learned much since 1944. We still fight wars, still send boys to die, still teach them to see uniforms instead of people, still demand duty over conscience, still celebrate violence and treat mercy like weakness. I watch the news and see the same patterns, the same cycles, the same terrible mathematics of war, but I also see the ripples. I see Klaus's daughters working for peace. I see my grandson helping other veterans. I see young people questioning, resisting, refusing to accept that war is inevitable. I see small acts of mercy multiplying. I see the cycle bending even if it hasn't broken yet. Maybe that's all we can hope for, that each generation bends it a little more, that each act of mercy makes the next one easier, that each story told makes someone else brave enough to lower their rifle first, that Klaus and I weren't unique, that we were just 2 of thousands, millions, small moments of grace that history doesn't record, but that change everything for the people involved. I think about the German soldier Klaus didn't kill before he met me. There must have been one. Some American or British or French soldier who lived because Klaus hesitated or missed or chose mercy. I wonder if Klaus ever found him, ever got to share that weight. I hope so. I hope everyone who carries war guilt gets a Klaus, gets a moment of forgiveness, gets to know their mercy mattered. And I think about the other times I pulled my trigger, the times I didn't hesitate, the times I followed orders, the shadows in windows and the sounds in the dark and the shapes in the distance that might have been soldiers or might have been civilians or might have been nothing. War is full of might have beens. Full of choices made in terror with incomplete information and consequences you never see. Klaus didn't absolve me of those. Our friendship didn't erase the other choices, didn't make me clean, but it made me human, made me more than just my worst moments, made me more than just my best moment, made me the sum of everything, the mercy and the violence, the courage and the fear, the duty and the conscience, the boy I was and the man I became. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. My health is failing now. Heart problems like Klaus. Doctors say it could be months or years. No way to know. I'm ready when it comes. Tired. Ready to see Sarah again. Ready to rest. But I needed to tell this first. Needed to put it down somewhere permanent. Needed to make sure Klaus's story survives me. Because that's what scares me most. Not death. But forgetting. But the story dying. But future generations not knowing that mercy is possible. That cycles can break. That enemies can become friends. That 17 inches and a loose bootlace and 2 scared boys can create something beautiful from something horrible. My kids will remember. My grandchildren will remember. Klaus's family will remember. But will anyone else? Will the story survive beyond us? Will it mean anything to people who didn't live through that war? Who don't understand what it meant to face someone and choose mercy when every instinct screamed kill or be killed? I don't know. But I'm trying. That's why I'm telling this. Why I'm putting it out into the world. Why I'm hoping someone listens, someone hears, someone understands that this matters, that this is more than just an old man's war story, that this is proof, evidence, testimony that humanity persists, that grace is real, that mercy has power. There's a cemetery not far from here where I'll be buried when my time comes. Sarah's waiting there. My plot is next to hers, already paid for, already arranged, simple headstone, just my name and dates like I told my son. Nothing fancy. Nothing that draws attention, just another veteran sleeping near his wife. But I've asked for one thing, one addition. Below my name and dates, I want them to add, he chose mercy. That's all. 3 words. 3 words that sum up the most important thing I ever did. The choice that defined me more than any battle or medal or year of service. The choice that gave me Klaus and everything that came from knowing him. Greta promised she'd come to the funeral when it happens. Said she'd bring her family. Said they'd tell the story. Said the 2 families, American and German, would stand together at my grave and remember the day in the forest when mercy won. When 2 boys became men by refusing to kill. When the cycle bent just a little bit more toward peace. That's my legacy. Not the war, not the battles, not the duty or the service or the medals, but the mercy, the choice, the friendship built from ashes. The proof that enemies are just people on the other side of fear. That war is a failure of imagination, that we can do better if we're brave enough to try. I'm tired now. This has taken longer than I expected. Remembering is exhausting. Feeling is exhausting. Carrying all this weight even shared is exhausting. But it's good exhaustion, the kind that comes from necessary work, from setting down a burden, from confession and testimony and witness. Klaus used to say that bearing witness is a sacred duty, that those of us who survived owe it to those who didn't to tell the truth, to not let war be glorified or sanitized or simplified, to make sure people understand the cost, the real cost, not just the dead, but the damaged, not just the bodies, but the souls, not just the moment, but the decades of carrying it. So this is my witness, my testimony, my truth. I, Henry Lawson, chose mercy in a frozen forest in France, and Klaus Richter chose mercy first. And we both carried the weight of that choice for decades, and we both found peace when we finally met. And we both built lives worth living from that one moment of grace. And now I'm old and dying, and the world still hasn't learned, still makes boys into soldiers, still teaches them to kill, still treats mercy like weakness and violence like strength. But the story remains, the proof remains. The ripples remain. And maybe somewhere, someone will hear this and choose differently. Choose mercy. Choose humanity. Choose to lower their rifle first and trust that grace might answer. That's all I can hope for. That Klaus and I weren't unique. That we were the first of many. That the cycle is breaking slowly. That each generation gets closer to peace. That someday, no 19-year-old will have to face another 19-year-old with a rifle and make impossible choices. That someday, war will be a story we tell to remind ourselves what we escaped, what we evolved beyond, what we chose to leave behind. But until then, the story matters, the testimony matters, the proof matters. Klaus lived, I lived. 2 families exist because of mercy, because of choice, because of grace breaking through when everything said violence was the only answer. That matters. That has to matter. That's why I'm telling it. My grandson asked me once what I wanted people to remember about my life. I told him this story, told him about Klaus, about Sarah, about the choice in the forest and the meeting in New York and the 50 years of letters and friendship that came from one moment of mercy. And I said, I wanted people to remember that mercy is possible, that it's not weakness, that it's the bravest thing you can do, that it's the thing that saves us when nothing else can. He understood. He'd faced his own moments in Iraq, made his own impossible choices, carried his own weight, and knowing about Klaus helped him, gave him permission to be human, to be merciful, to choose conscience over orders when it mattered, to carry the weight but not let it crush him. That's the ripple, that's the echo. Klaus's mercy in 1944 helped my grandson in 2004. 60 years apart, two different wars, same impossible choices, same need for grace, same proof that humanity persists, that we're more than just soldiers, more than just uniforms, more than just the violence we're trained to commit. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I don't know how much time I have left. Could be tomorrow, could be next year. But whenever it comes, I'll go grateful. Grateful for the 17 inches. Grateful for the loose bootlace. Grateful for Klaus's courage to lower his rifle first. Grateful for my courage to not raise mine. Grateful for Sarah who made me face my past. Grateful for every letter Klaus sent. Grateful for the meeting in New York. Grateful for the peace we gave each other. Grateful for the families that exist because two boys chose mercy. And I'll go hoping this story survives. Hoping it reaches someone who needs it. Hoping it makes mercy a little easier for the next person facing an impossible choice. Hoping it proves that grace is real, that forgiveness is possible, that enemies can become friends, that the cycle can break, that humanity wins when we let it. That's everything now. That's the whole story. 73 years compressed into words. A lifetime of carrying reduced to testimony. The weight shared one final time with anyone willing to listen. The proof offered freely to anyone who doubts that mercy matters. I was 17 inches from death. Klaus was one trigger pull from death. We both lived. We both chose mercy. We both carried guilt. We both found peace. We both built lives. We both created families. We both proved that war doesn't have to destroy everything. That grace breaks through. That humanity persists. That mercy wins. Remember that. Remember us. Remember Klaus Richter who lowered his rifle first. Remember Henry Lawson who didn't raise his. Remember that two boys in a forest in France changed everything for two families by choosing something other than violence. Remember that it's possible, that it's necessary, that it's the only thing that will ever break the cycle. Remember mercy. That's my story. That's my life. That's my testimony. Don't let it be forgotten.